Hello my friends and welcome back. Today we are in Tillsonburg, Ontario, and we're doing something a little bit different. As you can see, I'm actually standing outside in front of a very beautiful house. But this is not just any house, my friends. This is the Annandale National Historic Site. This was built in 1880 by E.D. Tillson, the first mayor of Tillsonburg. This is part of his retirement plan. You can see it sits on a very large piece of property here. Quite large when you look at the rest of the neighborhood, which the houses here are all quite beautiful, I have to say. None of them are in poor shape whatsoever. They're all very, very nice looking houses. This is part of our Canadian National Historic Register, not because of the beautiful Victorian exterior, but actually because of the interior, known as the aesthetic art movement. This house was designated in 1997 because of that interior. Now, the story goes, the wife of E.D. Tillson was at a speaking seminar, whatever you want to call it, back when they were building this house. And who was there other than Oscar Wilde, the famous playwright and poet? He had some thoughts about the world and art. And he thought that people should express art not just through art itself, but turn your whole home into an art piece. And that is exactly what they did with the interior of this house. It is beautiful. I wish I could show you video more than just me walking around the outside here. You got a little bit of B-roll clips of the interior. Just such a beautiful inside, beautiful exterior. So the city of Tillsonburg owns this property. They run it as a museum. The rear portion there is new. It's the museum. And the actual Annandale House here, absolutely gorgeous. So I figure what better way to start off our tour of Tillsonburg than with one of the most iconic buildings here in town. Now, today is also the day of the mayor's levy. I'm not attending it. I am in sweatpants. And as you can tell, I'm a little out of breath because it is minus 15 degrees out. So what we're going to do, as we look at the front door here, just absolutely stunning work. Beautifully restored. Cannot get enough of it. Such a lovely house. Anyway, we are going to now start our tour of Tillsonburg along here where the Annandale House is. And tell you a little bit about the town, tell you about the history, tell you about the culture, all sorts of fun stuff as we drive around Tillsonburg, Ontario. All right, we are on the road now as we're driving through Tillsonburg. We just finished at the Annandale House, as we discussed. So let's talk a little bit about the town itself. This was established, it was incorporated as a town back in 1872, but it was actually originally settled by George Tillson in 1825. The small community here at the time was known as Deerham Forge. And then after a few years, the people here, I guess, liked Mr. Tillson so much, they decided in 1836 to rename the town to Tillsonburg to honor its founder. So population currently, as of 2021, 18,615 people. That is up 17.3% from 2016. So like usual, we see here in Ontario, town is on the rise. People are moving here. The average age population is 47 years old. The average in Ontario is 42. So a little bit older here, a little bit more maybe retired folks. People living their best lives here in Tillsonburg, and I can certainly understand why, because it is quite a nice little place to live. There's quite a lot here, quite a bit to do, and I feel like Century Homes, this is the place to be. Now let's talk about income here. The total individual income per person in Tillsonburg, $47,080, which is, I'd say it's a little low, but that's okay. Average household income, though, that is low compared to what we've seen at the other towns we've done, only $87,600. So slightly less income per household. That could easily also be because there are fewer people per household here compared to the other towns that we have done so far. Average home price here, $521,500. That is quite a bit lower than the provincial average of $807,000 Canadian. Now we're going to be turning onto Broadway in a second here. This is the main street that runs through Tillsonburg, and I'll talk about that in a second. But before we do, I want to talk a little bit about the language demographics here. 96.7% of the town speak English only. 0% speak French only. Big surprise. 2.8% speak both, though. That's a nice change. Usually it's less than that. And then 0.2% speak other. And when I say speak other, I mean they don't speak English or French. They speak something else. But we're going to be turning here onto Broadway. The first thing you should notice is just how wide the street is. And this is because of the roots of the actual town. This began as a logging town, cutting down trees and moving wood. They needed very wide streets in order to accommodate the wagons and the buggies that were bringing the big trees. So in order to do that, they made the street extremely wide. And that it is something that you, as a city planner today, can only hope for, but it's usually hard to do. So the fact that Tillsonburg did it about 200 years ago means that they've sort of future-proofed their downtown core. You can see pretty much every single building along downtown here is occupied, and a lot of the buildings are historic. They're older buildings here. Again, Broadway being the original main street that ran through town. This was the center of commerce for the village. This is where people wanted to have a business. There's housing above in some of the buildings as well, but it's nice. It's quiet, quaint, good amount of parking. Just makes it feel nice and open. Now, I mentioned that the town was incorporated in 1872. The first mayor of Tillsonburg was the son of George Tillson, E.D. Tillson, Edwin Delevan Tillson. He became the first mayor, and he is the one that built the Annandale House. So after he decided to retire, he wanted a nice place to live, and who wouldn't? That is such a beautiful house that I can absolutely understand why you'd want to build that as your estate. And obviously, the Tillsons were pretty wealthy here. If you're able to start an entire town, you can make quite a bit of money doing it, running the commerce and industry here. But now the house is part of the town, and I think it's good. It shows the heritage, and they seem to have sort of moving, different rotating things come through the museum. So it's nice to be able to have some different things to be able to go and see the museum often. I highly recommend coming and checking it out. You can see some of the older houses along here. Again, the town itself celebrating 200 years this year. Interesting designs here. That looks like a older home that they've kind of converted, and then that looks like a weird house that they've just sort of ruined. And then another beautiful century home here, Victorian style, very much like the Annandale House. Look at that with the tower. Oh, it's lovely. It's a cafe, though. So they've converted that into a business. You've got a United Church here. But just, if you're into architecture, you're into older style houses, you're into the beauty of what makes, a downtown, an older town like this really thrive and vibe, you gotta come and check this place out, because there's a lot to see. You're gonna be pretty busy, just like we are. I mean, I could spend about an hour just driving through some of the streets here, just because there's so many older homes to be able to look at, so many older buildings, and unlike some of the YouTube channels you might find out there, depending on places that you go, the houses are run down. But here, at least in Tillsonburg, they are very well maintained. Clear pride of ownership. People love their houses. They love their town. And I think that's one of the reasons why Tillsonburg is growing, and one of the reasons why it'll continue to grow. It's not necessarily close to the 401. It's not really close to the GTA, but I think it's close enough that people can appreciate the small town charm without having to sacrifice any of that big city vibe that you get by getting too close to the GTA. You can see here again as we exit northbound along Broadway, just absolutely stunning houses here. And even the ones that aren't that big, or maybe don't have a grand show of color and decor and whatnot, they're just still very lovely to look at. Extremely well maintained, which you don't always see. We've seen plenty of houses over the years, century homes that have been neglected, run down, beaten up, destroyed, and it just kind of brings a tear to your eye when you see that. But when you come here, you get tears of joy, because they are very lovely. And you can see, like, even these ones, these are all, you know, say, turn of the century. And for the most part, they're all very, very well maintained. Now, I will admit, there's only so many things I can be an expert on. I'm kind of an expert on cars. I try to be an expert on houses. I used to be part of the Heritage Committee, but the house in front of us looks to be a gingerbread style, even though it doesn't have the gingerbread decor. It's for sale. I'm not a real estate agent, but if you're interested, come on down to Tillsonburg. So you can see we're coming back south along Broadway again. It is a Sunday, the 5th of January. We came here originally on New Year's Day. Not quite as much traffic as there was today. Today a little bit more traffic. So you do have to bear with me as I try to navigate the town without getting too many people upset from me driving slow. But you can see these are mostly newer style houses. Some of them are older, some of them are newer, some of them are renovated. Not quite as interesting, but still something to look at. I mean, look at some towns today. They're all cookie cutter houses. So it's nice to see pretty much everything is different as you come through Broadway. Some more century homes along the side here. You would have missed them just based on our 2-camera setup that we're going with today. And we come back into town here. One thing I didn't mention as we were coming through the town here, the Tillsonburg Town Square here, the shopping mall. This used to be Town Hall, and it was converted back in the 70s to a shopping center, and there was some controversy when that happened because people wanted to keep the history of the town, but some people saw the need for progress. They understood that, you know, a lot of the people who were living here, they were going to some of the larger cities in the area to get their goods and services, so they wanted to have a proper shopping center here that would keep people in town. And the fact that they've just recently renovated it, seems like there's a high level of tenant occupancy in there. Goes to show that it did work out in the end to have a mall here in town. But as we head down the end of Broadway here down into the valley, I would like to mention a couple of things. You know, we've been here quite a few times in Tillsonburg. There's some nice antique shops, if that's what you're into. There's some nice restaurants as well, including the one that we're coming up to here on the left side as we come down into the valley. This is actually quite a lovely restaurant that we went to. But we came here sometime last year, and it was very good. The restaurant there's a little inn on top if you want to stay, sort of like an old-style tavern. Extremely good food there. Quite a bit of space as well. I was surprised. It looked small from the outside, but quite large. But as we exit Tillsonburg, we also exit out of our video here. We appreciate you watching. As always, we do get back to everybody in the comments. So if you have any questions about Tillsonburg or anything that we're doing here on PRN Hours to Discover, please let me know. We love hearing from you. We love our subscribers and our commenters, so make sure you're getting active in our community here. PRN has a number of YouTube channels depending on what your interests are, and we hope that your interests align with ours. Maybe you're into other things as well. So you can check out some of the other stuff that we're doing here on the network. But we appreciate you watching. And until next time, take care.